This new garden subfloor teaser is enraging me with its horrendously complicated nature. Okay, so for some context, I asked the Doors developers for a hint towards the next update, the one with the heavily awaited garden subfloor that was indecipherable. And let me tell you, they sure did deliver on their promise. This teaser is probably one of the most difficult Doors puzzles I've ever seen. And although I do have my own theory as to what it may mean, I've taken a look at some of your guys' own theories to see what other inputs I could get for analyzing this monstrosity. So, in this video, we'll be solving once and for all possibly the greatest Doors mystery as of now. That being what the heck this teaser actually hints towards in the garden subfloor. So, with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so let's start with what we know so far about this teaser. Essentially, in the past, the developers have used emojis to hint towards upcoming features. One of the most well-known instances of this is the use of the falling leaf emoji, which very obviously represents the garden subfloor as a whole, as it is used in many messages regarding that update. This indecipherable hint is similar in that sense, where it's a series of emojis, yet only this time it is way harder than just a simple falling leaf. What we received is probably the most random assortment of symbols I've ever seen, those being a rock, an anxious face, 3 dots, and finally a worried face. I mean, what the heck even is that? What does a rock have to do with being nervous? It's a freaking rock, for crying out loud. Let me tell you, this really stumped me, but I've come across 3 explanations that could explain what this all means. Let's start with what I, as well as many others, believe the last 3 symbols in this message mean, as those are somewhat easier to decipher. The second emoji in this string of text likely represents a player at first feeling anxious, as I don't know of anything else that could express such an emotion. The 3 dots could symbolize the passing of time, as typically 3 dots in a row reference a lingering or passing of time. Lastly, the final emoji probably represents a player realizing their initial fears are becoming a reality, as now their expression is worried. Together, these 3 emojis tell the story of a player first being nervous, then becoming full-on worried after some time passes, and the existence of that dreaded rock emoji could imply that the player experiences these emotions after witnessing or doing something with a rock. So, with all of that out of the way, how could we interpret this into a feature inside of the garden subfloor? Well, my initial theory over what these emojis could mean is that they hint at the existence of a new entity coming to the game. This is a little far-fetched, but just hang on here with me. Essentially, what I first thought is that this teaser could hint that in the garden subfloor, there would be an entity that would disguise themselves as a large rock decoration, or they would hide inside of one. This would cause players to automatically feel nervous around rocks, as they wouldn't know if it's just a normal rock or if it harbors an entity. Then, after some time passes, or if the player gets too close to the fake rock or something like that, the entity would reveal itself, causing the players to go from nervous to worried, as their fear of the rock being an entity now becomes a reality. Now, claiming the existence of a new entity from just 4 emojis is just pure speculation. There really isn't a whole lot of evidence to back it up. So, although it is technically possible some weird rock mimicking entity could be in the subfloor, it is something which I highly doubt. So, what are the alternative theories as to what these emojis could mean? Well, one popular theory I've seen floating around is it could hint towards a falling rock hazard. As you may have noticed, during the first part of the mine seek chase, players must navigate around falling rocks that fall from the ceiling. So, if this same mechanic is presented in the garden subfloor, it could instigate the emotion seen in the last 3 emojis out of the players. For example, you could see the rock on a ceiling, be nervous about what it is because you won't expect what it could do, then after some time passes it falls and strikes the ground, sending players into a panic. This theory that the emojis presents falling rock hazards could also be further backed up by how there's evidence to support a new seek chase is coming to the garden subfloor, which I've discussed in a previous video. and since fallen rocks originated in the mine seek chase, I wouldn't put it past the developers to reuse that mechanic in a potential garden subfloor seek chase. Still, asset reuse like this typically isn't used by the developers, so it's possible we are thinking about this all wrong. What if these emojis hinted towards an entirely new feature rather than something already in the game being repurposed? Well, the other main theory I've seen regarding this teaser is that it hints towards a falling rock hazard. No, not the one I just discussed, but another one. You see, a very common trap mechanic seen all throughout the media is what I like to call the rolling boulder. I'm sure all of you know what this is, but it's essentially a trap that forces people to run away from a giant rolling boulder, typically on a downward sloping hill, as if they don't run, they'll be squashed by said boulder. Now, given how iconic this trap is basically everywhere, as well as how the boulder itself could represent the rock emoji in the teaser, I feel like something like this has a good chance of being what this teaser is trying to hint at. Imagine for a moment you enter a long downward sloping hallway in the garden subfloor, only to look behind you to see a giant rock slowly moving towards you only to eventually pick up speed. That would send players into a nervous panic, as depicted in the last 3 emojis of the teaser, and it resulted in players quite literally running for their life as the giant boulder would be hot on their tail. I think out of all 3 theories presented in this video, this one is the most likely, and I definitely think it could result in some fun reactions out of players experiencing it for the first time, as the sudden realization that you have to endure such an iconic trap after witnessing the boulder could definitely shock a lot of people. Now, before I end off this video, there's one more thing I'd like to mention regarding this teaser, and that is the function of the 3 dots. Now, I've interpreted these as just the passing of time, such as the player initially starting out just as a little anxious, then after some time passes they become worried. However, these dots could theoretically represent any action in between the player feeling nervous and worried. Going back to the far-fetched rock theory, the hypothetical entity could theoretically reveal itself after some time has gone by, causing the shift in emotions. But it could also reveal itself if something else occurred, such as if the player got too close to the rock disguise. What I'm trying to say is that we could be thinking about the 3 dots all wrong, and I feel it is important to recognize that, as although it obviously should depict the passage of time, it could just very easily not do that. And that could throw off a bunch of these theories which seemingly have a good foundation. Anyways, to summarize, the Doors developers recently released an incredibly difficult teaser to decipher, and I, as long as the Doors community, have come up with 3 theories to explain it. The most likely is that it represents how a rolling boulder trap could be present in the subfloor. However, it could also symbolize the return of the falling rock hazards from the mine seek chase, or even a new entity that disguises itself as a rock before revealing itself to the player. Really, there are a lot of possibilities for what this teaser could mean, and I can't wait to see what it actually does represent when the garden subfloor does actually release. Still, just keep in mind that all those theories should be taken with a grain of salt, as although they do seem strong at first, misinterpretations with things like the 3 dots could entirely throw them out the window. So, with all of that being said, let me know in the comments what you think these teasers mean, and thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy.